welcome to the Good Girl Confessional Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Lowrys, and the Good Girl Confessional Podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond who want to be seen and heard, and you all have a story to tell. You can join us and our revolution at WB40.com. Before I begin today's podcast, I would like to pay my deepest respects to the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. And I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Today in the podcast, I am super excited to be chatting to a delightful and incredible human. Her name is Kate Toon. Kate has just written a book called Six Figures, and I can't wait to talk to her about it. But she is an entrepreneur. She's an award-winning business mentor, and she owns a suite of businesses helping people in business to understand their marketing, their SEO reach, etc., etc. But she's also an extraordinary human being who wanted to be able to run a business, to free up her life and spend more time with her child, hence her new book. So please welcome to the confessional, the amazing Kate Toon.
Hey, it's another Sandy here, Sandy Davies. I'm the founder and formulator of Happy Paws Balm for intimate dryness. Find us over at happypaws.com.au. That's happypause.com.au. And get some happy on down there. And in the meantime, keep listening to Powerhouse Sandy Lowrys on the Good Girl Confessional Podcast, where every woman has a story. We love this potty.
Hello, beautiful Kate Toon. How are you today?
Very thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me, Sandy.
I'm super excited to be here, and it's been a while in the making because you are a very, very busy lady, and so am I, but still, you're way more busy than me. And yes, last time we tried to book you in, my house flooded.
Yeah, that's true. That wasn't
wasn't called for. And you went, and then you, of course, went off because you were traveling a lot in recent times. So it's so beautiful to have you here finally.
Hurrah. Thank you for being so patient.
Oh, no, thank you for being so patient. Congratulations, first of all. I want to say a big congrats on your brand new book, which, by the way, is extraordinary. I know because I have finished it. 6 figures in school hours. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for saying that, because I don't actually know that many people who've finished it yet. And I don't know what people think. Like, it's all very well and good to sell it, but then for people to actually like it after they've bought it is a big thing. And at heart, you know, I am a writer. It's not just a business tool. I want to, in real life, I want to be a writer. So, you know, the enjoyment of the book is really the thing. Do you know what I mean? Not because I'm never going to make any money out of it. So it'd be great if people actually enjoy it.
People, get out about and read this book. Especially, I will say, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a business owner, small business owner, even if you're a medium, large business owner, get to it. But you're also juggling a lot of other commitments. You're juggling family and you're trying to find a balance and you're not really sure how to do it. This is the book for you. And I loved that in the book you actually do say, I don't know, I don't speak to many people who finished it yet or something. And I was like, I laughed because I was like, well, I'm finishing it. So it's great. And I love the whole concept of this book because really you were inspired many, many years ago to start a business. Now, when we say one business, Kate, you own so many businesses now. It's unbelievable. But I wanted to start, we will talk all about the book, but I wanted to start back where it began because you've been in business as a woman in business. This is pretty huge. You've been in business since about 2008. Is that right?
Oh gosh, let me think. Yeah, that's when I started my own thing. Probably a bit earlier. I started it as a bit of a side hustle. I had a proper job and I really wanted to be a copywriter. So I was doing bits and bobs on the side. I was actually getting work via Gumtree. Can you believe that? That was in the UK. And then, when I got serious was when I got pregnant. So I got pregnant. My maths is appalling. It would have been 2008. Yeah, that's right. And about 5 months later, when I was, 5 months pregnant, I gave up my proper job and started my own business. So I've never really had a business and a baby separately. They've always been together, and my business has grown up as my child has grown up, and they are both now grunty teenagers, no longer irritable toddlers. So it's been quite an adventure over the years. Yeah, it's a long time.
Wow. And for anyone who has ever run their own business, and I can honestly say that it is it's a hard slog, but it's even a whole other layered slog, I guess, when you've got young children. So tell us about that. So you've got this baby, you've got this little bubba, and you decide, tell us why you decided, I'm going to start my own business.
Well, I think, me and my partner had struggled to have a child. We've been told that we wouldn't actually be able to. So he was a bit of a surprise and felt like my chance. I don't know, like a sign from the gods. So, I was working full time in advertising at that point. And it's a very stressful job. It's long hours. It's high adrenaline. There's lots of, Friday night drinks and late night pitches and all of that. And it just wasn't going to be compatible with the kind of parent that I wanted to be. I wanted to be there to put him to bed, and I wanted to be there to take him to school. So I had a choice to make. There was no way I could be that kind of parent and do that job. So I thought, I'll start my own business. Now, I have worked in advertising. You'd think that would make me know something about business, but of course it doesn't. Being an employee is so different. I knew nothing about accounting or marketing or finances or legals or anything. And so, to be honest, I say this in the book, that first year was just crap. There's no glory in it. There's no beauty. It wasn't a beautiful journey. I wasn't on Instagram. I don't think Instagram existed. Sharing pictures of me and the baby, typing. Do you know what I mean? Oh, cute. It was just pretty miserable, to be honest. And people don't talk about that. I was sleep deprived. I had no idea what I was doing. I was desperate for money. And it was just pretty grim. So it started off. It wasn't a great start, put it that way, Sandy.
Yeah, wow. And the thing is, I love this especially. I love so many things about your book, actually, because there's so much wisdom in this book and so much great advice. But one of the things I really liked about that was that you did talk about that. And because anyone who has started their own business, even if it's a side hustle or is, trying to be an entrepreneur out there, it's messy. It is quite at times messy and very lonely. I think that's the other thing as well that people never tell you, because you so rightfully say in one of the chapters in your book, you talk about how people have adoration for business leaders, and you talk about the Elon Musks of the world, et cetera, et cetera. But what they don't talk about is the mess behind that, is the toll that major success might take on someone's family. But in the beginning of starting a business, no one talks about the sleep deprivation, the worrying about money, the worrying about having no money come in the door, the worry about how am I going to do all of this by myself, and who's backing me here, and what am I doing?
Hey there! When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly!
To his regrets around the amount of effort he put in. And so, really that's what the book is about. We talk about balance a lot. This word balance is thrown around with business and parenting. And I just firmly believe that balance doesn't exist. I think it's yet another thing that's put upon us, especially women, that we have to achieve this kind of like Zen balance of being a great mother and a great business parent. It just doesn't exist. Like some days I'm a great mum. I do the lunchboxes, I do the things, I listen, I don't get cranky. And then other days I'm an amazing businesswoman. I'm funneling and email marketing and all of that. But they're very rarely the same day. I mean, very rarely do I have like a balanced week. I think it's, you spin one plate and it get that going, and then you start spinning the other, and you're just constantly trying to keep the plates up. And I think that's the thing that we need to realize, that if you're working towards the goal of balance, you're working towards a goal that is impossible to achieve, and you will never get there. So therefore, you'll always feel like you're failing. And it's very hard to be successful from a place of feeling like a failure.
Yeah, I love that. I love it because I do think as women, I'm sure you're the same, similar generation. I'm older than you, but I was raised by a mum who was, burning her bra in the 70s, it's for my right. You have it all. You can have it all. We can have it all, but we have it all at a cost, and we have it all, right, at what does having it all look like?
Yeah.
So I raised 3 kids. I've always, swapped between working full-time for other people and having this entrepreneurial spirit and wanting to write, wanting to do different things. I've been really lucky that I've kind of been doing it all, but as you say, at what cost? I felt like when I was working full-time, when my marriage ended and I'm, juggling 3 kids, and it was bloody hard. I felt like I was giving them all of me because I didn't have anything else left in the tank.
Well, this is it. And I think mum guilt, I talk about parent guilt, but if we're honest, I do think mums feel it a little more. I think it's just a constant burn in the back of our brain. And as you said, I think we're a similar age. My mum, our parents or our mums got us this right to do everything, but we're the first generation that's trying to work out how to do it. And there's a tendency to look back, and I wrote a post about this yesterday, and paint the past perfect. Like you look back and you see a little picture of your kid and you think, oh, I missed that time. And I look back at that and I think, oh, I missed that time. And then I'm like, do I? God, we had no money. I was exhausted. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. Constantly ratty. I was probably drinking way too much wine after hell hour, when you put them to bed. It wasn't the best of times, It's not what it was, but it never was what it was. So it's really important to have more women, especially out there, being really honest about this difficult period. And as you said, yes, you can have it all to a degree, but there will be a consequence. And usually, unfortunately, the consequence is you. You take the burnt shot. You come last. There is zero self-care. The number of women I know that through having their own business and kids have piled on the weight, who drink too much, who are stressed to the eyeballs, who are not sleeping, who wake up at 3 a.m. and worry about the entire world. That's the cost. And over time, you really look back and go, what is it worth it to have the perfect Instagram feed, to earn a little bit more money, to be able to go to fancy pants events? Is it worth it? I'm not sure that it is. I look back and think I made some bad decisions. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, to kind of help other people not make them. But, at the time I wouldn't have listened even if people had told me, because that's what we're like, right? So it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And I think, I actually quite loved that you talked about that in the book. I loved that you shared those very vulnerable, very real moments about your life. But, and I'll jump into that now as well, because I am one of those women that tends to, when I'm stressed, I gain weight, and and I've been thin and I've been fat, and I've, embraced myself regardless, but I've drunk too much and I've done all the things. And so that really resonated with me. And I also know a lot of other women who, as you say, especially in business, or who have like hugely stressful lives for whatever reason, who sit into that category as well. Let's talk about that though, because recently I was absolutely thrilled that you wrote an article for us at WB40 about what happened for you really when you gave up drinking, what happened to your career. And you talk about this in the book as well. And in the book, you're very careful to say, I'm not preaching, this is just my journey, and if you're interested, go find out more. But the article that you wrote was a lot more personal, and it really was about what did happen, what changed for you when you gave up drinking, and what was going on in your life, I guess, at that time that made you think, actually, this isn't working for me, I need to stop.
I think, funnily enough, when I gave up, I wasn't drinking as that much, to be honest. But I think, I've always, since my teens, used alcohol for celebrations, commiserations, and after a long period of time, it became the only emotional tool in my toolkit. And I think it's very common for mums at home to have that glass of wine. There's a whole mummy culture of wine, which I totally bought into, people with doormats that say, you're only welcome if you bring wine and yada, yada. It's a whole thing, and it's very permissible. If we were talking about vodka,
rosé all day.
If we were talking about vodka or, ice. I don't think it would be quite as prevalent. You're not allowed in unless you've got some methamphetamine. But we are, we're using it to self-soothe. We're using it to get a break. We're using it to reduce anxiety. And the truth is that it actually breeds anxiety. It gives us a 20-minute dopamine high that we can never then get back to. So we drink more and more to try and have the same feeling, and we can't. And then, it's about 10 days for alcohol to clear the system. Now, I've done a lot of reading on this, and I don't want to be preachy because I'm not perfect. I had a drink a couple of weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to take a pause, examine my relationship with alcohol, get out of the habitual drinking, which is a couple of glasses every night. During COVID, I'd say it was probably nearly a bottle every other night, and just try and find other ways to self-soothe. And as I talked about in the article, the biggest thing for me was all my life I felt anxious and worried and had this existential dread that something awful is just about to happen. And one of the ways I got rid of that was to have a drink, have a glass of wine, chill out, just chill out, have a glass of wine. When I stopped drinking, the existential dread's gone. I just don't do that. And I literally cannot engender the same feeling. Sometimes I'll try, I'll sit there and go, oh, let's worry about something. And I cannot make myself do it. So the very thing that I thought was the cure was actually the poison. And by giving it up, it's, not living in a state of permanent anxiety I don't understand people who don't feel anxious all the time, because that's how I am. And now I don't feel like that. And your life just opens up. Everything seems possible. Nothing seems overwhelming. Everything's dealable, withable. And that to me was revelationary. And I just feel like a fool that it took me till 50 to work that out,
Oh, and look, I would say, please don't feel like a fool, because at the end of the day, like we do, like, you've come from the UK, living in Australia. There's 2 countries. I mean, we could name a dozen, many, but we do have a huge drinking culture. And you're right. Everything is about, if you're celebrating, if you're commiserating, if you're upset, if you're anxious, if you're happy, if you're glad, if a baby's born, doesn't matter what it is, we drink. And it is definitely in our culture, and it's so subliminal as we were growing up that it was just, that's just what your life was like. I remember, and I've talked about this a bit, my mum and her friends would come over and they'd be drinking their wine out of their cooler bar cask of wine. I can't believe it. And we thought we were just so clever that as we got older, we're drinking bottles of wine. We were so much.
Yes. And this is it. As you get more and more wealthy and older, you start paying $60 for your bottle of, ethanol rather than $10, and therefore it's not as bad for you. If I drink Verve, I'm a better person than if I drink cask wine. It's the same stuff in a fancier package. So, as I've said, it's funnily enough, the giving up alcohol gave me the wherewithal to write the book. So I wrote the book in 6 weeks, which is, very fast. And for anybody, I mean, I am a copywriter and I'm a fast typer, but still. But unfortunately, the book in the last few months has been the cause for me to kind of take a bit of a step back, because the book tour was super challenging for me. Probably met 300 people in the space of 6 weeks. And I am introverted, so I'm ambiverted, so I can turn up, but I can't turn up for long. And sometimes it gives me a lot of stress to kind of be, hi, I'm Kate, And so the very thing that I did because of not drinking became a thing that made me take a bit of a step back. And as I said, over the last couple of months, I've, had a glass of champagne here and there. But the big thing I've learned as well, whether it's alcohol, food, cigarettes, whatever, social media addiction, whatever it is, whatever your addiction is, we're all going to fail because we're human and we have our bad moments. The biggest thing for me has been learning how I handle that failure. Because previously, when I had a failure, a personal failure, when I felt I'd let myself down, I'd be like, well, you've done it now. You've had a drink. You may as well have another drink tomorrow, and you may as well have another one. You're just a bad person. You just can't do this. You just got an addictive personality. You're just weak-willed. You're just this, start to tell myself all those negative stories that would then make it worse. Whereas now I just go, oh, well, I'm only human. I'll start again today, and I'll get as far as I can get. And that ability to stop beating myself up has been huge as well. And I think that applies to so many things in life, not just alcohol.
Yeah, I think that's such an extraordinary point. And you are one of many, because I am seeing a movement, and I think we've shared it a lot on this podcast as well, but we're a movement of women who are actually saying, I need to make a change in my life, and it's a difficult change. And alcohol seems to be a reoccurring theme. We spoke to the beautiful Kate Murphy, writer and now artist, who shared her story. For her, it was going into rehab and it was quite serious, but the change in her life that this has made and given her like a totally different view of the world. And she'd seen that, the world through the lens of drinking for so long. I think that's very powerful, right? It's powerful.
It is. And I think, if you're what I was, which is what they call a grey area drinker. So it's not like I was like, drinking a bottle of vodka every day. I was, casually having a glass of wine when I went out. And people be like, that's nothing. Why are you worried about that? And I'm like, because it doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve me. It makes me stressed. It makes me anxious. You could have one glass a month and that could still be too much for you. So you don't need to be like a rampant alcoholic. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't really think alcoholic is a useful term, to be honest. But, it's what doesn't work for you. And that's whatever it is, whatever it is. For me, it was food for a long time. It still is food. I'll always go back to food as my little comfort. And it's just trying to find other ways to get your dose. I talk about this in the book, the dose, the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, right? And the other problem for a lot of women, I think, is they're lonely. They're fundamentally and deeply lonely. They've got kids, either they're too young to talk to, or they're teenagers and they're difficult to talk to, or they're adults off living their own lives. They've got partners who they've probably outgrown. Sorry to be brutal. They work at home, so they don't have a huge friend network. Making friends as an adult woman is incredibly hard because we've all been burned and had trust issues. So a lot of women are incredibly lonely, and we don't talk about this enough. And therefore, they use alcohol as a friend. Do you know what I mean? It's something to keep them comfortable, or food as a friend. And the other, we talk about dose, those happiness chemicals. But the big thing for me was halt as well. Whenever I'm about to make a bad decision, I think, am I halt? Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Now, I'm tired most of the time because I'm old. I'm hungry most of the time. I'm lonely sometimes, and sometimes what I actually need is not a glass of wine. It's a chat. It's a bit of human company, So I think that's something to address. And this is the thing. Like, I'm getting quite sort of spiritual now. Woo woo. Alcohol is the symptom. It's not the cause. And the horrible thing about when you give up drinking is you have to sit with all those uncomfortable feelings that you've kept at bay for years, and you have to go through them and process them, and it's horrible. It's not fun when you actually realise the reason you've been drinking is you're just a bit bloody lonely. It's a bit embarrassing. You can talk about anything online now. You can say, oh, I've got ADHD, I've got autism, I'm fat and proud, I'm whatever. But to admit that you're lonely is a bit embarrassing still in this world, and I think that's at the root of a lot of women's issues. I don't know what you think to that. That was a bit of a rant. What do you think?
No, I think it's a powerful message, and I think that you're right. I think I have felt very blessed in my life to be surrounded by a very amazing core group of female friends. And I think not just female, I do have male friends as well. But those female friends, I think, have been pivotal in my life through ups and downs because I trust them with everything, and that I could call upon any one of these women and really go, blah. And, we joke about, a really good friend is someone who knows where the bodies are buried. Well, yes, I haven't buried anybody, but my girlfriends really know everything about me, warts and all, the good, the bad, the very ugly, whatever it may be.
You're very blessed in that, because I think, lots of women see other women with groups like that and feel very envious. I don't have that. And, when I had my son, I moved away from Sydney and I didn't have a mother's group. I felt very isolated. I don't have any family over here, no sisters. None of my friends were having babies. It's a very isolating time to have a baby. And then it could be extra isolating to then run your own business from home because, you're like, no one's going to notice if I was dead until the smell hits the door. Like, literally no one knows. And that's, so I think you're very blessed to have that. And I think, especially when you get to a certain age, it can feel quite challenging to try and build that up again.
That's one of the reasons, Kate, honestly, because I felt so blessed. And the more women that I met through things that I was doing, the more women were telling me that they didn't have friendship groups and that they felt very alone and they felt quite isolated in some ways. I think I was sort of catapulted into action really to start WB40 for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons I wanted to start that was suddenly being very, very aware of how many women were feeling, as you say. They were standing alone in their stuff and they didn't have anywhere to go to say, my life is falling apart, or my partner's an ass, or I'm drinking every night because I don't know what else to do, or, you know, whatever it may be, right? It's, oh, my work is crap and I'm feeling overlooked. I'm not getting promoted. And I agree with you. I think I'm very lucky to have carried those friendship groups with me through life, because I think when you get to this age, it is much harder. It's not impossible, though, and I do want to say that to women who are out there. It's not impossible.
There's one of her friends ringing now. Ring. No, it's not impossible, but you need to be a little bit vulnerable, I think, to be able to go out there. And, you know, another reason why in my business, you know, I could have a very fancy Instagram and whatever. I do have quite a fancy website. I'm very proud of my website. Thank you. You know, I could be this epitome of success and wear pencil skirts and have perfect hair and you know, have photos of me online laughing with my friends in pubs and bars and whatever. And I do, and also I don't, because I think it's really important for business people, business women, to show that it's really hard, you know, and it's not perfect. And I think there's too much kind of I'm perfect online, and it makes us feel even worse. So, you know, I did a live the other day, and at the end of it, I realized I had a piece of tuna on my t-shirt, you know, which is very me. And there was a big part of me that went, I should delete that, because here I am trying to say I'm a 7-figure entrepreneur, join my mastermind, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I do have tuna on my t-shirt, so let's embrace the tuna. That's what I think.
Embrace the tuna. And the other thing that I should mention too, that while I have this lovely group of girlfriends and they're the best, and I shout out to them all the time, they're chicks. They are not in business, or one of them is. One of them is a business owner. The others, you know, so it is. That's the other thing. I think when you're a woman in business as well, it's really, really kind of important to find other women in business that you can see, because it can be extraordinarily lonely, even though your friends go, yeah, good for you, but no one kind of sees if you.
No one gets it.
They don't get how many hours go into it. They don't see that you're up at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning to hit a deadline. They don't see that, you know, that you're recording a podcast and your phone goes off and you've nearly done it. What, you know what I'm saying?
But that's charming. I love it. No, literally, one of my friends yesterday, Jodie, who is, you know, a friend I've made recently. Look at me making friends. But she got 20 people to sign up to her e-commerce Facebook ads program, right? 20 people in this economic climate. It was not a cheap course. And she'd like told her husband and told her kids, but there was no one that could really celebrate it. So she came into my group. I mean, I celebrated with her, but she came into my group, and within a minute, she'd had like 37 comments from people who get what it takes to achieve that in this economic climate, and get what that means to kind of in a couple of days make $60,000-$70,000. It's amazing, you know. And so, yeah, you do need people who get you in all different ways. You need a village, right? We need our little village of different humans that help us for different things. I think that's the thing, isn't it?
We do need a village. And we also need, you know, people in our life like that, like to have these amazing women in these business groups, like your community is quite amazing, but to have people you can go, She's the Boss is another one where you can go.
I like Jules.
Yeah, Jules Brooks. I'm shouting out to her as well. Hi, Jules. But, you know, to have groups like that is so important, because it's not just when things are going great, as you say, where you want to celebrate something. And it is really disappointing when you go, oh my God, I did this amazing thing, and everyone around you goes, oh, it's nice. Is it nice? I think it's, so they don't really know. They don't know, which is fair. I mean, you can't expect people who aren't in it to know either. But it's really important to have those people who can champion you when things are going dismally, when things are really going bad and you go, oh my God, this is crap. I'm not hitting my sales. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing whatever it may be. But to have those people, I think, is so valuable and so important. Yeah. And in your book, you talk about community a lot, which is really lovely. And I love that. So, you know, I want to say that, like, so you stayed business in 2008, basically because you got a baby and you didn't want to be in advertising anymore, which makes sense. But now you have a suite of businesses, I want to call it, a group of businesses and a team supporting you and your extraordinary hard work, because you never stop working. Like, you are a hard worker. That's an understatement, everybody, by the way. She's a hard worker. but you've got a suite of businesses. So I want to talk about that and how all of that came about. So because you started with katetoon.com, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I started with just a basic bitch website, really. And in that first year, I did anything because I'd been working in advertising. So I could do anything. I could build basic websites. I made logos in PowerPoint. How embarrassing. Couldn't afford Photoshop. Did a bit of copywriting. Pretty quickly worked out that copywriting was my jam, and the SEO copywriting, writing copy that would please the Google gods, was a bit of a niche and also very male dominated. So I moved into that, and probably after about 6 or so years, so probably about 2015, I'd kind of reached the peak of that. That sounds very arrogant, but like I was, working with big brands and Telstras. I was charging high rates, but I still only had about 15 hours a week, realistically, billable hours. Yes, I could say between pick up and drop off, but as I talk about in the book, we think we've got 6 hours, but we don't. By the time we've gone to the loo, put the washing on, gone to Coles. So, the one thing I could never, and you get to a ceiling with what you can charge where even the big brands are going, hey, hang on, that's a bit more than we thought. And so it was partially the idea that I wanted to be able to make more money, but also I was just bored. It's boring working with clients and just writing copy about pipes one day and vibrators the next, although that was a fun job. So then it all really kicked off because I started to do workshops about SEO in person. And I could see by the end of the workshop that people were just dead inside because it's so much to take in. And then so they were like 8-hour workshops, and I thought, oh, this would work really well as like an 8-week course. And I know today that sounds obvious, but we're talking 2015. There weren't that many courses back then, not at all. And then I got a lucky break. I went to ProBlogger. Darren Rouse had this amazing conference called ProBlogger, and they said they could get some people up on stage. You could talk for 10 minutes. So I got up on stage and talked for 10 minutes. So that's 600 people there about SEO to people who would probably hate SEO and not even know what it was. And off the back of that, I started a group and I did a 10-day challenge, and the rest is history. Do you know what I mean? I'm now up to the 27th launch of my big course, which is, huge. I also set up a copywriting membership, which has courses and resources and a shop and a conference and a podcast. And then I set up my core business, which is the Digital Marketing Collective, which is a membership, a conference, retreats, mastermind, podcast, book, speaking, blah, 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 blah. But it's all just grown iteratively. Like I layer this thing, I try a new thing, add that in, get that working. Okay, it's working, still working. Okay, we'll add another thing. And as that went on, I got people to help just for a couple of hours a week here and a couple of hours a week there. And that built up till now I have about 15 people. They're all subcontractors. Some do 2 hours a week, some do 30. But yeah, it's people look now and go, oh gosh, you've got all these things going on. But, it took ages, so it's not an overnight success by any that,
My partner always says, an overnight success that took 15 years in the making.
Exactly.
But it's true. And I think that's what people see when they see successful people, is they assume that it all happened. There are those rare birds where, for whatever reason, but they're extremely where they become overnight success. Overnight generally means, as you say, years in the making, blood, sweat and tears, a lot of trial and error. Another thing that you talk about, though, in the book, when you talk about all your businesses, is the things that didn't work, as in, that it wasn't always easy. There were failures along the way, and it's what you learned in that experience, I guess, that drove you forward.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to say I don't really think I've had many failures because I don't view things as a failure. So, have I had launches where I got fewer people than I would have liked? Yeah. Is that a failure? Not in any way, because I got 20 people, and those 20 people had the best goddamn course of their lives because they got so much attention. I think the only failures I've had have been more character failures, character flaws, which have been more around being insecure and comparing myself to others and getting fixated on other people's success and why I don't have it and what have they got that I don't, and spending a lot of time kind of not hate following, but envy following people and wasting time looking at what they're doing rather than focusing on my own. So I think most of my failures have been character flaws, which I've worked on over the years. I don't class anything I've done in my business as a failure, even when it's lost me money or whatever, because as you said, it's all a learning experience. I'm doing air fingers because that's a bit of a vomity thing to say. I mean, the main thing is, as we were talking about with the, eating too much and drinking too much or whatever. It's how you handle the failure. And at the end of the day, I don't really celebrate my successes or commiserate my failures. I just turn up the next day and do it all over again. So I had one day with my course when it was at its height, 2017. I don't know why I was at its height then. But I had one day where I sold out 80 spots on the course in 8 hours. So I made 160 grand in 8 hours, which to me, as a working class British person who's never had any money and, you know, not very financially, whatever, literate, was just, I couldn't comprehend it. But did I go out and buy a Lamborghini? No. The next day I turned up and, reconciled my zero and plodded on. That's the thing. So it doesn't matter. Don't celebrate the successes. Don't commiserate the failures. Just keep on an even keel. And I generally find that's the best way to go.
You are amazing. And one of the great things that you talk about in this book as well is really facing your fear around finance, facing your fear around, and obviously, like you're so good at it now that, as you say, like you hit these major peaks and then go, right, I still have to turn up tomorrow. But a lot of people, and I would say especially women, are not financially literate, and a lot of myself included have this kind of background fear of money.
Yeah, totally. I talk about that in the book. There's a whole section on that. Because, I used to think money mindset was a bit of a nonsense term, and I definitely don't believe in manifestation or anything like that. I'm sorry. I just don't. I believe in practical doing. I know what manifestation means in its true sense. It's trying to have a positive attitude towards things rather than telling yourself negative stories, but you have to do the work as well, So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of had no financial literacy. I left it up to an accountant who didn't do a great job, got in big debt with the tax office, everything you could have done. And then I discovered Profit First, which was huge for me. I got a Profit First person, Laura El-Kasasi, to do my figures. And it took me a couple of years to really do it properly, but that has been the life changer for me. That was the turning point. And just forcing myself, I mean, gosh, I must have asked my bookkeeper the difference between net profit and gross profit 150 times until it just clicked, So not being embarrassed about my level of ignorance, looking at my zero every day. So the first thing I do every morning is reconcile my zero. Should I be doing that as a CEO of my company? Probably not, but I don't give a shit because I need to. That's important to me. And yeah, it's been life-changing for me. Do you know what I mean? I've gone from being hugely in debt to getting to the point where now I'm focusing on building generational wealth, which is my dream, like setting my son up slightly better than I was set up. Not too well. Don't want to have him too easy. But, just knowing that I'm not going to end up in a flat being eaten by my own cats, that's my goal. And I think I may have put that off. I don't even have cats, so I don't know. There'd be other people's cats eating me, but,
Or Alsatians or something.
Yeah, it's Alsatians, right? That's the Bridget Jones.
Which I love. Love Bridget. I found that hugely helpful. I've got to say, even for me, and it's what I love is that you just go, oh, look, I'm just going to say it, I'm going to be brutal, and you say, and I'm like, yes, because we really, a lot of us as women have that fear, and that fear of coming forward and saying, I don't really understand what you're talking about. Yeah, I have in more recent times, at least, talk to my tax agent, whatever, and just go, what does that mean?
Yes.
Which is really important, because I do think that we are not raised, I don't know about the UK, but in Australia, certainly, we weren't raised to have any financial literacy. There was no budgeting going on in high school. I wish they taught this stuff in high school. Yeah, and my son, because I've passed that on, I don't want to just pass on money. I want to pass on financial literacy. So he's actually an employee in my company now. So he's actually a full casual part-time employee, and he does Profit. He has his own bank account, his own tax file number. He has set up Profit First. Pretty simple. He keeps 50% of his money. The other 50% he saves for university, but it's at least the idea of saving. And he's got a raise account where he puts money in each month to shares, and he understands, savings aren't the best thing because inflation eats the whatever. So he is so much in a better place than I was. And hopefully he'll hit the ground running, because, I didn't have a clue about any of this. I got money and I spent it. And that was as simple as
And then when tax time came around, I had a heart attack every single time. And that's a horrible way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, though, it's that, especially if you don't come from a background of money, if your family doesn't have particularly quite a lot of money. I mean, of course, we're not raised with it. My family certainly didn't talk about money, and they were very, in that way, everything got swept under the carpet. Like, they just didn't talk about money. And so then I go through my life not really understanding money either. And as you say, especially if you're not earning a lot of money, no one said to me, hey, you just should, put all this money away. You should save. What is savings? What a bizarre concept.
I know. And it's also like, if you don't have much money, the idea of saving is ridiculous. I've got a training that I just made actually about this, because a lot of people read the book and were like, oh, I'd love to know a bit more. And I don't put myself out as a financial expert, but I have come a long way. I talk about minimal viable income. And I think that's a really important thing as a business owner to look at. What's the least amount of money you could live on? And I'm not saying live your best life. Like, you may only have Netflix, not stand and binge. You might be eating pasta 3 nights a week. What could you literally live on as the base level? And then that's your first goal in business, is to get that covered. And then the nice to haves come after. And some of the things that one considers essential are probably nice to have, like a car. Everyone's like, we must have a car. I didn't have a car for 12 years of my life. I couldn't drive until 2 years ago. Did I live a miserable life? No. Was life a bit more challenging at times? Yes. Waiting for buses and whatever. But it's doable. And it saved me a lot of money. And, it's all that, again, the problem that we have today is we used to be keeping up with the Joneses, the next ubiquitous Joneses. Now we're seeing on Instagram people living these amazing lives, and we want that. And it's, for most of us, it's not realistic, and it will never happen unless we're willing to become Jeff Bezos. And no disrespect, I hope he's not listening, but I don't want to be Jeff Bezos. That's a price I'm not willing to pay. So, as we said throughout this podcast, I think the message is, you can have your cake and you can eat it, but there's consequences to it. And are you willing to take those consequences? And I think when really you look at it, if you're a parent that loves their children, you're not going to be willing, because the sacrifices are going to be too big. And as I say in the book, the only person who's going to remember you working so goddamn hard will be your kids, just to buy a thing to impress someone who probably doesn't even like you anyway. Crazy.
And you probably didn't even notice that you bought the thing in the first place. I think that was really clever in the car. It was really clever in the book talking about cars, because you actually do say that people go out, they bust themselves to buy this fancy car, and then they think people are looking at them, but actually what they're looking at is the fancy car, and they're imagining themselves in the car behind the driver's seat. They're not really, they don't care.
They don't see you. Yeah, they don't see you.
Care about you. They're not interested 5 seconds after they've seen you. And let's face it, we live in a world of Instagram, so even after they've seen the fancy car and gone, wow, that's a nice car, 5 minutes later they've moved on to something new and shiny they're looking at. So yeah, they will remember the car.
Yeah, it's a funny one, and that's a big, as I said, failures have more been character flaws. Managing my own rampant ego and my impatience and my expectations are the biggest part of my personal development. Having a business is a massive personal development project, isn't it? And, reining in my ego and my expectations of myself and the life I should have has been the biggest thing for me. And I think it's only now that I'm coming out the other side of it and going, yeah, I've had a few years of having a reasonable amount of money, and it was okay, but I got to the point where I was replacing really good cushions with new cushions that were just as good, like stupid stuff. I'm not saying being poor is great. There's no glory in poverty. I've been very poor in my life, but there is a lot of glory and enjoyment in just being content, and finding your level of contentment, I think, is crucial to being a good parent and running a successful business.
And also too, as you say that, you're thinking about what is most important to you, rather than buying those cushions for the couch, having that money in the bank, and as you call it, is it fuck you money, or leading a fuck you life, because it gives you options, right?
Freedom. Money is freedom. Money gives you choices. That's at the end of the day. And it took me a long time to understand that is what it is about. The freedom not to work, the freedom not to take that job or do that thing. And I think, it just took me a long time to work that out. And I talk again at the end of the book, not giving too much away. But, you get to our age. We're so old, Sandy and I. And you start thinking, do I want a CV life or a eulogy life? It's not my line. It's someone else's line that I mention them in the book. I credit them in the book. But, do you want someone at the end of the day to go, oh, Sandy, she had an amazing podcast. She got 7,000 downloads an episode and her funnel was amazing. Or do you want them to say she was a great friend? She was a wonderful mum. She was a great daughter. She was a thinker and a doer and she made me laugh. That's what you really want, and sometimes it's very easy to lose sight of that. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but it just is a balance. It's not, I said balance, slap me. It just is a compromise,
It is a balance, and you so beautifully share so much wisdom in this book. I'm so grateful that you wrote it. I've got to say, but it is that reality check to just check ourselves occasionally and say, and as you said, when you're a business person and you're working at home and you're funneling all your energy into something, it is very easy to create narratives in your own head. And sometimes it's good to check yourself and just kind of go, actually, does anyone really even know what I do? Or does anyone know what they think? Do they have? Yeah. It is important to kind of check yourself. And I love that. I love your humor that comes through in everything that you do. And it comes through definitely in this book as well, which is fabulous. You are self-deprecating, but not to the point where it's awful.
I take my business very seriously. I am quite serious, but I'm not here. I'm not an oncologist. I'm not curing cancer. I'm making graphics on Canva and Maya Angelou quotes. Do you know what I mean? Can't take that too seriously at the end of the day. And I fully understand that if I disappeared tomorrow for whatever reason, after about 3 days, no one would absolutely give a crap. And that's nice. It's good to stay humble. I talk about it in the book. It's not about being humble in a kind of, as you say, self-deprecating, oh, don't mind me. It's about, I think, being astonished that we get to do what we do, that I get to work at home in my knickers, do all of this stuff, talk to people like you, spend time with my son, and live in this, we're so lucky to live where we live and have the freedoms that we have. I just want to stay astonished and not take anything for granted. And I think that's where the humor comes in, because I've got to take the piss out of yourself. And people who don't, humorless people in business, I've met a lot of them, it's wretched. It's really unpleasant to spend time with them. You want to be able to have a laugh at the end of the day.
Agreed. So I seriously will put up links everywhere because I want everyone to rush out. And listen, you don't need to even be in business, if I'm honest, to read this book, because I do think that you will take things out of it. Even if you're even thinking about, like, maybe doing a side hustle. Oh, Sandy, here in school hours. It's amazing. It's such a great book, and so much wisdom, as I said, throughout the book and throughout the chapters. Love it. Now, honestly, Kate, who should jump on and check you out? I mean, I'm going to put links up on your site, and you've got a number of businesses, as we talked about, everything from SEO to digital marketing and beyond. So who's your target audience? If they're listening right now, who should jump on board?
Oh, gosh, I don't really do audience avatars. I don't be like, oh, I need women called Maureen who are age 47. Look, I think, if you're thinking about having a business, or you have a business and you want, as I said, you take your business seriously, but you don't take yourself too seriously. I think probably one of the nicest places to start is my small community, which is called the Misfit Entrepreneurs. It's free. It's a bit silly, but there's good advice as well. I think that's a good stepping stone. And then at katetoon.com, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. There's a lot of different bits and bobs there. And the book, obviously, the book is available on Amazon, Big W, Dimmix, Booktopia, and my site. Buy it from my site, because then I get like more than 40 cents a book. And come and and it's not, as you say, a good community isn't really necessarily about the person who manages it. It's about the other people in it. So one of the things I, like you, believe in is I believe in community. I believe in bringing great people together. And I think it's called holding space, which is a bit naff, but creating a space where people can meet other people like them. That's my goal in life and in business now. So even if you don't like me from this podcast, go and join the community, because there's bound to be some people in there that you will.
Everyone's going to love you, Kate. You are amazing, but your community is amazing. your website, we said it before, but it is very sexy. You'll love a website. Jump on board if you haven't already. It's katetoon.com. But I'm going to put all the links into my show notes and across socials as well. And you're available. Of course, you can just follow on Instagram.
Yep.
And all over, and YouTube.
I think I've got a YouTube. God, who knows? I think I've even got a Threads account. Who knows?
Nice. Look, I recently joined Threads. For those that don't know what Threads is, it's really, let's face it, it's the Zuckerberg version of Twitter.
Yeah.
But without Elon Musk. And so there's that. And it's, I've got to say, it's
quite fun. I forgot about it. I think I deleted the app in a fit of pique and I haven't put it back on yet. But I have little periods where I'm good on Instagram, then I'm good on something else. But yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Sandy. I've enjoyed it. I've been a long time listener, first time caller. So thank you for having me. It's been great.
I've been a huge fangirl of yours for a very long time. I think you're quite extraordinary. And I think, it's just so fantastic to see that, every time I turn around, you're doing something else that's even more amazing than you just did. Honestly, if you really, really are thinking about starting your own business, if you've got a side hustle, if you've got a small business, please follow Kate, because she has been doing this for a lot of years. It's sensational, everything that you do, but she's got such wisdom to share. I've absolutely adored having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me in the confessional. And I can't wait to catch up with you next time that you're around.
Okay, for sure. Thank you so much, Sandy. See you later.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional Podcast. The Good Girl Confessional Podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.